let me point out we are talking about Code 1, Unit 2. In this particular Unit 2, you would find out number of poems are there, right? And we are going to cover a wide range of discussion on each of the poem or each of the poems and its themes, its styles, and its literary techniques, right? So the first poem is known as a sonnet 130, which is written by the great poet William Shakespeare. It is a satirical, take on conventional or common love story, right? Satirical and conventional love story or a common love poetry. So William Shakespeare subverts the traditional sonnet by presenting a realistic, real-based, rather than idealized, right? So realistic rather than idealized, like instead of considering it's a perfect, it makes it like a natural, make it like a real depiction of its beloved. So the theme in this particular poem is called as a realistic love, beauty versus convention, truth in relationships. That is the means main, you can say that theme of the poem, right? So like Sonnet 130, we also find out another poem which is called as the Skylark, right? Which is written by Percy Bysshe Shelley, P.B. Shelley is the short name. So the Skylark is also known as a romantic ode. Obviously, means we understood about sonnet, ode in our previous unit. So the Skylark is a romantic ode celebrating the Skylark's song. The Skylark song as a symbol of, you can say, transcendent joy and poetic inspiration. Here you would find out in this poem, the poet presents the themes. It's called as a nature. The poet presents freedom. The poet tries to point out the joy versus, you can say, human sadness or sorrow. Beside that, the poet also indicates poetic inspiration, right? So that is the second point, which also we are going to discuss. The third point, which is known as the human seasons. The human seasons, which is written by John Keats. And it is a kind of a poem which is indicating or a reflection of, you can say, on human life, reflection on human life through the comparison, direct comparison of the four seasons. Like when we talk about the human seasons, we talk about how human being or human life is compared with the four seasons, emphasizing or describing the nature cycles of growth, maturity, and degrading or decline. Here we can find out also the theme is called as a transience of life, that called as a life is temporary, isn't it? Transience of life or life is temporary. Nature's parallels with the human existence, right? These are the themes that you would find out in the poem called the human seasons. The fourth one is known as the brook. Brook is again indicating as the great poet Lord Alfred Tennyson. Lord Alfred Tennyson. So it is a narrative poem. You can say a kind of a narration, description, where the brook symbolizes what? The continuity of nature, right? So brook means referring to the lake, stream of the river, isn't it? So the brook symbolizes the continuity of nature as it flows continuously. And at the same time, it is contrasting with the human mortality. Human mortality means what humans, you can say that humans life is nothing but a temporary, isn't it? But if you talk about, means here the best line you would find out: man may come, man may go, but I go on forever. Right. So it indicates that human's life is temporary, whereas the brook goes continuously. Right. So therefore, it is known as a contrasting with the human mortality. Here we find out the theme. It's called as a permanence versus transience. Permanence versus transience. Nature's resilience and humans' lives ephemerality. Right. Ephemerality means what? That's not called as a permanent short or short period of time, isn't it? Then we talk about the another point, which is called as a because I could not stop for death. That is written by Emily Dickinson. Emily Dickinson. So in this poem, we find out the poet tries to discuss a meditation of path. Right. So path of what? A path of death. A meditation on path of death, or you can say a meditation on death, that is personified or compared with the human's quality as a kind and gentle carriage driver, guiding the speaker towards a permanence. And here also we find out the theme is, our themes are death, immorality, and passage of time. Could you please close the door? So, death, immorality, and passage of time. That is what the poem, because I could not stop for death. Then we find out another point, which is sixth one, so that is called as a village song. In this poem, village song, you would find out the poet Sarojini Naidu. I hope everybody knows him, knows her. Village song, and that is written by Sarojini Naidu. This is a kind of a poem which is a kind of a speech style, a monologue. When you say monologue, mono means one speaker. So it is a dramatic monologue. Which one? Village song is a dramatic monologue in which a village girl expresses her fear and hesitation about leaving home for an unknown future. Right? So, therefore, it is known as a monologue, a dramatic monologue. And here we find out the themes are what? Nostalgia. Nostalgia means remembering the past, remembering the moments that you that you know that you feel in the past. So here we find out nostalgia, innocence, and the contrast between tradition and adventure. The contrast between tradition and adventure. The last point, which also we are going to discuss, that is called as a love after love. Love after love. And that is written by Derek Walcott. Derek Walcott. This is a modern poem about self-discovery. What is that love after love? That is called as a modern poem. And what it is all about? It is all about self-discovery. So, not only self-discovery, it also indicates a healing and self-love after the end of romantic relationship. After end of romantic relationship. So here we find out the themes are what? Self-acceptance. Self-acceptance, healing, and rediscovery of identity. Isn't it? Now, if you observe that, the poem, the first poem, which is called as a Sonnet 130, William Shakespeare. So, in this poem, William Shakespeare takes a unique approach, unique method to describe his beloved. His beloved means what? His lover, right? So instead of exaggerating her beauty, exaggerating, you understand, something that you express in a huge manner, that my lover is most beautiful of all the lovers. isn't it? So all the lovers of their love, so or their loved one, instead of exaggerating her beauty, the poet did what? Uh, Generally, we find out that many poets of his time did. So, poet generally does what? Means generally describes, exaggerates, or excessively describe about his or her lover. But the poet William Shakespeare did not do that. So, what the poet tries to do here, he describes her reality. He describes what? Her reality. He says that her eyes are not bright, not as bright as the sun. Her lips are not as red as a coral. Coral, you understand? That you find out in the ocean, right? So, coral. And her hair is like black wires. Black wires, you understand? That the cable TV wire, which is black in color, so he said that her hair is like black wires. However, the poet ends the poem by saying that what he loves her, he loves his lover genuinely. He loves his lover genuinely. Genuinely means authentic or actually, really. Not because of what? Exaggerating beauty. Not because of what? Excessive beauty she is. But because of who she really true is. Who she truly is. Isn't it? So that is what she tries to point out. The poet's perspective, if you talk about poet's perspective, we find out that William Shakespeare mocks, you understand, criticize. William Shakespeare criticizes the unrealistic comparison in love poetry. So generally, the poet's main intention is what? Not to criticize all those poets who try to, means present the idea which is not real, right? And generally, those poets, when they write the love poetry, they exaggerate. Therefore, the poet mocking them, the poet mocks or mocking those poets. The poet believes that true love is not based on what? True love is not based on fake praise. Fake praise means what? By telling something which is not true. You shall not praise others, or you shall not praise your lover by false. The poet said that if you want to, means if you really love somebody, if you truly love means somebody, then go for the what? Genuine affection, genuine understanding, genuine affection or and the genuine understanding. What do you mean by affection and understanding? When we talk about affection and understanding, we are trying to describe that how truthful you are towards her or him, and how well understand to her or him. So his message is that love should be honest and not based on superficial beauty. So you shall not love somebody because he is beautiful. You shall love somebody as you genuinely fall for her. So the poet Sonnet 130 begins by William Shakespeare, or written by William Shakespeare, begins with what? My mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. Coral is a far more red than her lips red. If a snow be white, why then her breasts are done. If her heads be wires, black wires grow on her head. I have seen roses dim. I have seen roses damasked, red and white, but no such roses see I in her cheeks. And in some perfumes is there more delight than in the breath that from my mistress reeks. I love to hear her speak, yet well I know that the music has a far more pleasing sound. I grant I never saw a goddess go. My mistress, when she walks, treads on the ground, and yet, by heaven, I think my love as rare as any she belied with the false compare. Now, do you see that? You find out there are means four stanzas. How many stanzas? Four stanzas. But if you observe that the first, second, third stanzas have covered with the quatrains. Quatrains means what? Four lines. But the last one is couplet. Couplet means two lines. Are not they? Right? So, and if you observe that the first three stanzas have come up with sun red dun head, white chicks delight tricks, no sound go ground, rare compare. So the first three stanzas having with A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, and G, G. Sit down. So G, G. In that case, the first three stanzas have covered with AP, AP, CT, CT, EF, EF. But last two lines are couplet, which are known as a GG. Right? Means same. Like how rare compare. Are not they so the same sound, same rhyme, isn't it? So in sonnet, in this point, when you talk about that, the poet begins with what? My mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. Nothing like the sun. Take this sign and take the admit. So my mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. It means the poet starts by stating that. The poet starts by stating that what his beloved eyes are not bright, not shining. How? Not shining or not radiant. So, like the sun, you know that the sun's ray, which is shining. But the poet starts by stating that his beloved eyes are not bright or radiant. This contrasts with the typical poetic comparison that glorifies a lover's features. Generally, we find out the lover praises the lover means glorifies a lover's features. But here we find out the contrast. The poet doesn't means glorify or glorify his lover's features, his lover's beauty. So therefore, my mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. Second, coral is far more red than her lips red. So even the poet compares the color of whom? Color of his mistress' lips to corals, and admits that coral is a richer red. Coral is a richer red in color, right? So, and implies that the poet's lover's lips are not exceptionally bright or beautiful like the coral reef, isn't it? Third, which is called as if snow be white. So, if snow be white, did you guys sign here? Okay. Yes. If snow be white, why then her breasts are done? If snow be white, why then her breasts are done? So the poet stated that he contrasts, he again opposes the whiteness of snow. Snow, you understand, right? Snow, the whiteness of snow with its mistress skin. Mistress skin is white, but not whiter than the means of snow. So instead of being fair, it means the poet stated that instead of being fair like snow, which was a conventional beauty standard in his time, her skin is a dun. What do you mean by dun? A dun grayish brown shade. A dun grayish brown shade. That is the color. of whom? That is the color of his lover. So therefore, when he said that what his mistress is not whiter than the men's snow. So if heads be wires, black wires grow on our head. The poet says that, or he playfully suggests that if hair were compared, hair were compared, or hair was compared, because hair is an uncountable noun, but as we are reading the poem, so hair were compared to fine golden threads, fine golden threads, a common poetic image you can see here. His mistress' hair would instant resemble black wires. So strong but not delicate or golden. Strong but not delicate or golden. It means uh, his mistress' hair is strong like the wires, but not delicate or golden. Right. So generally, when we compare our lover, the poet also said, I have seen roses damasked, Damasked, damasked. I have seen roses damasked, red and white. So the poet mentions the word called as a damasked roses. It means roses with the mixed, right? So roses with the mixed red and white who means color, right? Variety of color. So damask roses, I have seen variety of roses which have a different colors or hues. So which were often used as a symbols of beauty. You compare the beauty of the rose with the beauty of the mistress. But the poet did not do that. What did the poet say? That the poet says he sees variety of roses in different hoods, but no such roses see I in her cheeks, right? So it's not like the romantic images or imagery in poetry. He made his mistress cheeks, you understand? His mistress cheeks do not have the rosy glow. Rosy glow means like the beauty of the rose. So that he did not find out in his mistress cheeks. So of such flowers, and in some perfumes is there more delight, and in some perfumes is there more delight. So it means he acknowledges. Who acknowledges? The poet. The poet accepts that some perfumes smell far better. Some perfumes smell far better than in the breath that from my mistress reeks. The breath, the smell that I get from her body is not like the smell of the perfume. It means perfume smell is better than of his lover. So he stated that he acknowledges or he knows that some perfumes smell far better. So than in the breath that from my mistress reeks, than his mistress breathe. The word reeks suggests an unpleasant smell. Reeks means what? Unpleasant smell. A humorous but realistic admission. So if you are telling somebody that somebody's breath is not pleasant, it means you are not means insulting. You are telling truth, isn't it? So that's what a realistic admission that the poet does here about his mistress, about his lover, right? Rather than exaggerated compliment, excessive compliment. The poet says, I love to hear her speak. I want to hear her speak, yet well I know. I love to hear her speak, yet well I know. So he enjoys listening to her voice. But there is also, he said, but he is also honest that music has a far more pleasing sound, which means so his lover's voice is not good that not as good as the man's music. So the poet says that the music sounds sweeter than her voice, not like conventional poetry. He doesn't falsely claim that her voice is the most beautiful he has ever heard. Right. I grant I never saw a goddess go. So I grant I never saw a goddess go. He admits he has never seen a goddess walk. It means he cannot compare his mistress to a divine being. So he doesn't compare his lover to a divine being. So he said, my mistress, when she walks, treads on the ground. It means not like goddess in poetry, who are often described as when goddess walk on the ground, floating gracefully, right? So his mistress simply walks on the ground like any ordinary human being. And yet, by heaven, and yet, by heaven, I think my love was rare. I think my love was rare. So, despite his honest descriptions about his lover, right? So, genuine declaration of his lover. So, realistic admission of his lover. He said that he believes his love is special. His love is extraordinary, isn't it? So, therefore, he said, and yet by heaven, I think my love is rare, or my love as rare. As any she belied with a false compare. As any she belied with a false compare. His love is just as rare as any woman who have been falsely praised. So, with exaggerated poetic comparisons, he criticizes poets who overpraise means flatter, excessively flatter women in unrealistic ways. Isn't it? That is what all this about this 14 lines of sonnet, right? Where, if you talk about that, this sonnet is a parody. This sonnet is a parody of traditional love poetry that idealizes a woman beauty or woman's beauty. Shakespeare uses realistic descriptions. Realistic descriptions. Why? Now, to highlight that love does not need artificial flattering, artificial exaggeration. So, true love appreciates a person as he is or as she is, isn't it? So, without needing false comparison. Got my point? Understood? The point, if I talk about the critical analysis of this point, what I can draw here, William Shakespeare's Sonnet 130 is a satirical take on the traditional love poetry of his time. Not like poets who idealized or inspires woman's beauty using unrealistic comparison. Shakespeare presents a humorous or a funny and honest depiction or description of his mistress. However, the poem is not an insult. The poem is not an insult. Rather, it is a celebration. Celebration of what? Genuine, authentic, a fact that love does not rely on exaggerated praise. The final couplet that you find out in this 14-line sonnet reveals the poem's message. What did the message we find out at the end of the poem that you find out in the couplet? That despite the poet's lover's imperfection, his love for her is rare and true. By rejecting false comparisons, Shakespeare makes a strong statement about the nature of love. The poet said that it should not be based on reality rather than illusion, isn't it? So that's what is nothing but all about this point. Now let's move to the discussion of poetic devices. When we say poetic devices, we talk about figure of speech, right? This point follows the Shakespeare's sonnet form consisting of 14 lines. How many lines? 14 lines with a rhyming scheme of what? What is the rhyming scheme? A, B, C, D, E, F, and the last couplet is G, G, right? So it is written in iambic pentameter. It is written in a iambic pentameter. Now, what is iambic pentameter? Now, again, like rhyming scheme, we also find out meter in the point, and the point meter is called as a iambic pentameter. It means each line of the poem has 10 syllables. How many syllables? 10 syllables. What do you mean by syllables? Sounds, right? Or vowel letters, you can see that. So, vowel sounds from which you find out the so what you can say that syllables, sounds. So, each syllables are 10 syllables with alternative stresses. Alternative stresses like what? Da dum, da dum, da dum, da dum, da dum, da dum. Now that is what known as a stress, unstress, unstress, stress, unstress, stress, da dum, da dum, da dum, da dum. Isn't it? That is known as a means 10 syllables. Dadam, 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 dadam. Right? Like 10 iambic pentameter and 10 syllables. Now, and here you would find out dum, dum, dum is nothing but a 5. Right? Therefore, iambic pentameter. Penta means 5. Right? So, the poem is divided into 3 quatrains. How many quatrains? 3 quatrains. Quatrains means 4-line stanzas. 4-line stanzas. So here you find out 3 stanzas are there which are 4 lines. Right. And a final rhyming is couplet. C-O-U-P-L-E-T. Got the point? Second, the poem is known as a satire and a parody. Now, what is that? A satire and parody. If you talk about the poem is a satire and parody, it means the poem mocks. Mocks means criticizes, isn't it? The poem mocks the excessive comparisons used in traditional love poetry. Used in traditional love poetry. Instead of saying, her eyes shine like the sun, instead of saying, her eyes shine like the sun, the poet states the opposite, that my mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. That is known as a mock. That is known as a satire and parody and criticism. Right? So, by using ordinary and even unflattering descriptions, Shakespeare challenges the conventions of Petrarchan sonnet. When you say that Petrarchan sonnet, Petrarchan, Petrarchan sonnets. Now, obviously, you ask me that whom or who does the poet criticize? The poet criticizes to the poets, but the poets of which era? Or who are those poets? Those poets who write the Petrarchan sonnet. Now, what is that Petrarchan sonnet? Now, in which the poet generally means, praises their lover. So, and the poet who writes this sonnet 130 is a Shakespeare. And during his era, or his time, is known as a Shakespearean era. Shakespearean sonnets, isn't it? So how do you consider that Petrarchan sonnet and Shakespearean sonnet are different? Because you would find out satire and parody is present in sonnets poetry, whereas in Petrarchan sonnet we find out praise and glorify their lover, isn't it? So, and you find out unrealistic also in Petrarchan sonnet. Understood? What is satire and parody? So, third one is called as a imagery. Another poetic devices. If you talk about that Shakespeare employs or engages or includes visual, sensory, sense, isn't it? So, visual, olfactory, and auditory imagery to create a contrast between poetic exaggeration and reality. Like if you talk about visual imagery, I can say coral is far more red than her lips. So lips compared to coral, isn't it? The redness of lips compared to coral. If a snow be white, why then her breasts are done? So the poet compares skin, isn't it? So skin tone compared to snow. Right. Third, if her hairs be wires, black wires flow on her head. Hair compared to wires. Isn't it? So these are known as a visual imagery because you see them, isn't it? Now, if you talk about olfactory, that called as a smell, isn't it? Olfactory, that called as a smell imagery. What do you find out? The poet uses called as a and in some perfumes is there more delight. And in some perfumes is there more delight than in the breath that from my mistress reeks. So her breath is not as fragrant as perfumes. That is known as a olfactory smell, isn't it? Then you also find out auditory sound, isn't it? Sound imagery. Like when you say, I love to hear her speak, yet well I know that music has a far more pleasing sound. It means her voice compared to music, isn't it? So in that case, once you find out visual, olfactory, and auditory. So these are coming under imagery. Fourth one is called as irony. When you say irony, Shakespeare deliberately undermining, undermining traditional poetic comparisons to emphasize their absurdity. When you read the poem, do you find out that poet anywhere written that he is trying to, undermining the poets of Petrarchan sonnets? No, nowhere it is written. But you would find out the poet simply going contrast to praise his lover is trying to criticize whom? The poets of the Petrarchan sonnet. Isn't it? So, because example, you can say, instead of saying his mistress has a sweet smelling breath, he bluntly states that perfume smells better. This ironic approach makes the final couplet more powerful, right? So, as it reveals the depth of his love despite age criticisms, isn't it? The first three stanza criticizes the poet's lover, but the last couplet shows that what, despite the criticism, the how much the poet loved his lover, right? So we also find out metaphor and simile in the poem, which is used. Shakespeare subverts typical metaphors and simile by using negative comparison. Like my mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. Normally, a lover's eyes would be compared to the sun, but Shakespeare states that here, hers are not like the sun. If her heads be wires, black wires grow on her head. So instead of describing her hair as golden threads, he likens them to black wires, breaking conventional beauty ideals. Then six is called as a hyperbole. Hyperbole means what? How did he, the poet, mocking his lover excessively, isn't it? So while the poem seems to avoid hyperbole or exaggeration, it actually uses mock hyperbole to criticize unrealistic poetic praise. Example, instead of saying her voice is more beautiful than music, he states music has a far more pleasing sound. So this overcorrection makes what? A traditional poetic exaggeration look foolish. Then the last one, we find out couplet. So which is called as a shift in tone. Couplet is also a poetic device. Shift in tone. We understood that the final rhyming couplet, lines 13 and 14, changes the tone. And yet, by heaven, I think my love as rare as any she belied with false compare. So here, William Shakespeare reveals that his love is not based on false comparison, that the other poets do that. So instead, it is real and unique. The phrase by heaven emphasizes what? His sincerity. Whose sincerity? The poet's sincerity. Isn't it? So here at the end, in the conclusion of this, we find out these seven poetic devices are used in the poem. Isn't it? So we understand that the poem Sonnet 130 challenges the conventional poetry, his time by the poet's time by rejecting exaggerated praise. Second, his use of irony, satire, and parody, and realistic imagery makes the poem unique. Third, the final couplet that makes us sure the strength of his love, proving that love does not need artificial embellishments to be valuable or artificial praise to be valuable. Isn't it? So, this realistic yet affectionate portrayal of love makes a sonnet 130 that what you can say, one of Shakespeare's most innovative and memorable sonnet. Understood? Clear now? I hope clearly you understood it.